Okay. Good morning, everyone. Again, on behalf of Columbus KTC, we'd like to welcome you to this second of 3 classes on the Fabricated Self, an emotional healing workshop with Lama Yeshe. And so, Lama, I'd like to ask you to turn the wheel of Dharma for the benefit of sentient beings.
Are we going to do opening prayers?
Yes, we can. Hang on just a moment.
Okay.
I'll get them up on the screen here. I was a little slow on the uptake last evening, so we're going to try to make it marginally faster today. I have to zip to the beginning of the prayer here, but otherwise we're good. All right, we're ready for you.
Okay. Dorje Chang Chen Te Lo Naro Dang Marpa Mila Cho Je Gam Popa Du Som She Ja Kun Kien Karma Pa Che Zi Chung Ge Yu Pa Sin Nam Dang Dri Tak Sol Sum Paul Den Druk Bar Sok Sablam Jagya Che La Nya Ne Pe Nya Me Drogon Dak Po Ka Yula So Dep So Kagyu Lama Dam Yu Pazeno Nam Tar Jen Ge Lo Jen Lo Gom Gi Kang Par Sung Pa Jen Say Nor Kun La Chak Chen Me Pa Dak Say Dear Do Ta Cho Pe Gom Chen La Ne Kor Chen Pa Me Pa Jen J Lo Mu Go Gom Gi Go War Song Pa Jen Men Nak Ter Go J Pe Lama La Gyun Du So Wa De Pe Gom Chen La Cho Min Mugu Ke War Jen Ge Lo Yang Mei Gom Gi Ngo Shi Sun Pa Jen Gang Char Tok Pei Ngo Wo So Ma De Ma Chu De Kar Jo Pei Gom Chen La Gom Cha Lo Dang Ral War Jen Ge Lo Nam Tok No Wo Jo Kur Sung Pa Jen Chi Yang Ma Yen Chir Yang Char Wala Ma Gak Ro Par Char Wei Gom Chen La Kor De Yer Me Tok Par Jen Ge Lo Ke Wa Kun Tu Yang Dak Lama Dak Dral Me Choki Pa La Long Cho Cheng Sa Dang Lam Ki Yon Ten Rap So Ne Dorje Changi Gopang Nur Top Shok Dorje Changi Gopang Nur Top Shok.
Still learning the system, and so stand by.
Yes, Lama.
I have to put the refuge and bodhicitta prayers up. Sorry, it's taking me a second.
Okay. Sanjay Chodang Soki Chok Nam La Changja Pardu Dakni Kapsu Chi Daki Jin So Ke Pe So Nam Ki Rola Penchir Sanjay Drupar Shok Sanjay Chodang Soki Chok Nam La Changja Pardu Dakni Kapsu Chi Daki Jin So Ke Pe So Nam Ki Rola Penchir Sanjay Drupar Chok Sanjay Chodang Soki Chok Nam La Changja Pardu Dakni Kapsu Chi Daki Jin So Ke Pe So Nam Ki Rola Penchir Sanjay Drupar Shok. Semchen Hamse Dewa Dang Dewe Gu Dang Den Par Gur Chik Duknal Dang Duknal Gigu Dang Ral War Gur Chik Duknal Me Pe Dewa Dang Pa Dang Ben Ral War Gur Chik Ne Ring Chak Dang Dang Ral Wei Tong Yom Chen Po La Ne Par Gur Chik Semchen Tamse Dewa Dan Dewi Gu Dan Den Par Gur Chik Duknal Dong Duknal Gigu Dan Ral War Gur Chik Duknal Me Pe Dewa Dan Pa Dan Men Ral War Gur Chik Ne Ring Chak Dan Dang Ral Wei Tong Yon Chen Po La Ne Par Gur Chik Semchen Tamse Dewa Dang Dewi Gu Dan Den Par Gur Chik Duknal Dong Duknal Gigu Dan Ral War Gur Chik Duknal Me Pe Dewa Dam Pa Nam Min Ral War Gur Chik Ne Ring Chak Dang Dang Ral Wei Tong Yon Chen Po La Ne Par Gur Chik. Paul and Sawe Lama Rinpoche Daki Chiwar Pede Denju La Kadrin Chenpo Gone Jason Te Kusun Tukchi Nodrup Tsal Du Sol. So good morning to all of you. And today I'm going to continue talking about the fabricated self and the implications of that. So to kind of review very briefly what the fabricated self is, it's a term that Gyalwang Karmapa uses in his The Heart is Noble book. And he is saying that this identity that we take on of who we are, much of it comes from external sources, from the culture that we are born into, the country that we are born into, or where we live, especially when we're younger. Our parents, our friends, media, and all kinds of other sources outside of us, but we take it, this is who I am. And I also talked about emotions that we can develop very briefly, and it's good to maintain some mindfulness if possible throughout your day in terms of where is your emotional state right now. And Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche used this when he talked about the 6 realms. He talked about it as being in two different ways. One was the actual realm that you live in and you might be headed towards when in the Bardo. And the other is to look at your mental state and the emotion that is a predominant one in your mind at the present time. And you are in that psychological realm. You might have a human body, but if you're angry, you're in the hell realm where you see lots of enemies and you have to defend yourself. And the same thing for greed, ignorance, denial. It's the animal realm. The human realm is a constant toil and wanting. The poverty mentality, I don't have enough. And it's interesting what enough is or what enough isn't, because there are some very wealthy people in the world today, including the United States, and it doesn't seem to, having that much wealth doesn't seem to dampen their enthusiasm for having more wealth and finding ways to spend it. Now you have to get into space before you can join the club. I did a little research on the internet. This is the beauty of the internet. You don't even have to go to the library. But in the mid-60s, the richest man in the world was J. Paul Getty. And he had a wealth. The Guinness Book of Records at least listed him as the wealthiest person in the world. And in today's dollars, this amount of money was a little over $7 billion. That's $7 billion. Musk is worth close to $300 billion, who is presently the richest man in the world. Now, you think they're happier with that kind of money? I doubt it, and it seems to be insatiable. But this is the human realm. And then there is, when we're jealous, we're in the jealous God realm. And when we are full of pride, we are in the full God realm. So we can go from one realm to the next, to the next, to the next in an instant, like my friend with a bag of trash. So this is also, it's good to see what realm am I in, what emotion am I dwelling in at this particular point in time. And then to keep at least in mind when you're doing this, that when you do a deity practice like Chenrezig, the instructions after the mantra is to see everything as the body, speech, and mind of Chenrezig. Now, if you can do that as you go through your daily life, that would be excellent. But it would be fine just when you do this mental scan to at least think about that you are Chenrezig and what you're hearing is his mantra, and that all form is his form, and so forth. So I'm going to start here, or continue, I've already started, with a quote by Traleg Rinpoche. And I want to introduce this by saying that one thing that I really appreciate about Traleg Rinpoche's writings is that he made a very great effort to understand Westerners, to understand how we think. Going to the university in Australia, even though Australia is not part of Europe or America, it's very Western in culture. They talk a little funny, but we can understand them. But he understood the Western mentality very, very well. And so he could teach in English without a translator. And the words that he used did not have to go through a translator. Because most translators are not enlightened like the teacher is. And I can't help but feel when you go through a translator that sometimes things aren't as clear as the teacher said. So here's the quote. Mysticism is about finding oneself in such a way that one is not only not alienated from oneself, but one does not feel alienated from others and from the world at large. A mystic is someone who feels at home. This imagery is used by all kinds of mystics, both in the East and in the West, finding one's home. This means the feeling that I know who I am, I know where I belong, a sense of belongingness, a sense of finding oneself, not in terms of ego identity, in the usual sense of finding oneself, but in a different way. One begins to realize there is so much in there within oneself. So many resources, talents, creativity, richness. It is all in there, but unexplored. So the mystic says, I can own up to everything that I am. And that is where the peace of the mystic originates from. Knowing that he or she is not a self-divided being. And that came from an article in a magazine titled Ordinary Mind Magazine. I've never seen it before. But anyway, I once had a meal. It was after a funeral, and there were some Tibetans that were present in this funeral. And a middle-aged Tibetan woman sat next to me, and she told me this as we were eating, that she said, there's a Tibetan saying that if you have a warm place in your heart for yourself, you will be comfortable wherever you go, which kind of summarizes what Traleg Rinpoche's quote was all about, that we need to develop this warm place in our heart and explore ourselves, look inward. And as I said last night, that getting angry at yourself when you look in and see faults is really counterproductive. That we need to be gentle with ourselves, encouraging. We need to love ourselves. In fact, if we can't love ourselves, how in the heck can we think that we can love other people? It just isn't going to work. And if we don't love ourselves, then we kind of have to go around soaking up like a sponge drops of love that others leave behind. Now, this is not being self-indulgent. This is just recognizing that if we are going to benefit other people, we have to take care of ourselves. It doesn't make any sense if we give all our food away to other people and have none for ourselves, because we're not going to last. It just doesn't work. And then you're probably going to develop regret of having given the food away as you are starving. But on the other hand, if we just, oh, this is mine, I'm not going to even let anyone touch it, that is self-indulgent. So we have to recognize this difference. And then something else here that Tralling Rinpoche brings up, and I'm not sure where he even brought it up, but it really jumped out at me when I read it. And that is, he talks about a functional self. And this answers this question that I had almost from day one when I came involved in Buddhism. And that is, if you have no self, how can you use the self-service gas pump? And well, the functional self explains this, that this self knows how to function within the society and the world that it lives in. It's that simple. It isn't full of conflicting emotions and this solid self. It's, this is how you use the self-service gas pump. This is how you take an airplane flight. This is how you use the bathroom, and so forth. This, of course, we do pick up from the culture, but you don't take this on as an identity if you are highly realized, let's put it that way. So this part of our who we are is not a problem. It's when we solidify it that it's a problem. It's when, and this happens all the time, the credit card machines in the stores, there are all kinds of different ones and they keep changing them. It's when they come out with a new one and you get mad at it because you don't know how to operate it. Now, that's not the functional self, that's the fabricated self and habitual patterns. So this is, I think it's a very important point to understand. So then in interconnected, Gyalwang Karmapa, he uses the term silos. And so I am going to bring up a picture of a silo. And now, that's my silo. And it's, as you can see, it's round, and it's probably almost as deep in the ground as it is above ground. And it's probably, I would say, at least 18 inches thick in the walls. And it's used to store feed for cows. But the way silos are used, and I especially I used this one in the winter because it kind of gives you this impression of cold, and there's no leaves on the tree or green grass, kind of the desolation of winter. So that is what a silo is. And now I'm trying to find my talk. The way he uses silos is that we, because of our fabricated self or our egocentrism, that we shut ourselves off from most of the world. Here is a quote from Interconnected. I sometimes describe egocentrism as a prison in which we have shut ourselves away from everyone and everything else. Our ego makes us prisoner. Only a limited few people or pets matter to us, and only they are allowed entry into our self-made jail. Everyone else is irrelevant, as if the world outside the prison doesn't really exist. Our own egotism and self-absorption act as the wardens that keep us shut off from the rest of the world. So this idea of silos, and it's used in a work situation too, that we have this circle. If it's a work situation, it might be the company, and it's not invented here, so we're not going to deal with this. Or it could be your own personal life, and you allow some people in, but very few. And the rest of the world doesn't really matter nearly as much as your circle of friends, your family, your pets, or whatever. It's interesting, I find, that the war in Ukraine is getting lots and lots of media coverage because they look like us. Whereas when the Russians were doing the exact same thing in Syria, not much coverage. They didn't look like us. They weren't in our silo, so to speak. Unfortunately, this is the world that people with egos, fabricated selves, live in. It's called relative reality, where we, again, project our habitual patterns, our social conditioning, our fabricated self onto phenomena, onto appearances. And not only is this the way I see it, this is the only way to see it. I came across a term that is not in a Buddhist book, but I really liked it. And the term is separate reality. That because of this silo that we live in, we have a separate reality, and my separate reality is different from everybody else's separate reality. And if we would make a drawing of circles, there would be a little bit of my reality that would agree with a little bit of somebody else's reality, but they would never be identical, because as soon as we have this fabricated self, we've got separation. And as soon as we've got separation, then we are free to interpret things the way we want to. So it's really important, actually, to realize that the way you are seeing things is through your own, you might say, lens, your own silo, your own way of seeing things. Now, as you progress along the path, these walls get weaker and weaker and get more expansive. Hopefully, it's a sign of progress, actually, if your separate reality becomes more inclusive and less judgmental. And you see that you start seeing other people a little more clearly. And very interesting experience that I had was I was working in the prison, and this as a chaplain, just a reminder to those that are watching that I was there as a chaplain. And so I taught meditation. We had a weekly meditation session, and would encourage the inmates to practice it back in their rooms. So after this one inmate had done this for a number of months, he told me, you know, there's a lot of suffering in this place. And it's not just the inmates, it's the staff. And this is what can happen when you practice regularly, is you start realizing that there are people in the world that you are encountering all the time, and that they are having bad days too. And maybe their days are even worse than your days. And it is true about the guards, or as they say, the uniformed staff, that last night I talked about being arrested in Chicago with trumped up charges, fabricated charges. And that left a very bad attitude in my mind, this fabricated self, about police. And but right after I got hired by the Wisconsin Department of Corrections, a retreat led by Thich Nhat Hanh came up in Wisconsin, a drivable distance for me, that was for people in criminal justice. And so I asked for, literally, I think it was about a week after I got hired, I said, I want personal development leave. And I got 5 days of personal development leave and went this retreat. And it really helped me see police officers as human beings that are subject to all the frailties and limitations and egotistical problems that humans have. Plus, it's a very stressful job. Nobody likes the police unless they need them. And then even if they need them, there are going to be other people around that are going to be calling them names and doing all kinds of things, and that they're humans. And this really allowed me to kind of let go of a lot of everything from fear to attitudes to being uncomfortable there with officers that basically they looked like police officers, but they were the guards in the prison. And so where I'm going with this is that we can change if we allow ourselves to change and we open up to see where it is, where we've got this wall around us, and to at least weaken it little by little, little by little. Here is a list of 5 unrealistic expectations in life. I like this. I use this a lot in emotional healing programs. And of course, it's all based on this fabricated self. The first is, I am the most important person in the room. And I take this room with me wherever I go. So that's the first. We might share the importance with somebody else from time to time, but basically it is, I'm the most important person. The second is, I should be respected just because of who I am. Obviously, you should know that I deserve respect. However, you have to earn my respect. So that's the second unrealistic expectation. But the third is, others should know without me telling them what my expectations are, and live up to them, of course. And again, but I don't have to live up to other people's expectations. I mean, this is what freedom is all about. The fourth one is, I should not be harmed in any way. And harm is an interesting, I don't know, concept, because there is physical harm, there is mental harm, and there is what I would call just plain irritation, being stuck in traffic at rush hour, or even when there's not rush hour. And it's amazing how upset people can become when things aren't going their way. Something that I have realized in myself is that when I'm in a hurry, little things tend to get bigger if it's slowing me down. I am in a hurry. And whether it be at the store, waiting in the checkout line, or on the road when there's traffic, or really your computer isn't behaving the way you would like it to, and you want to use it, and you're in a hurry. That we tend to get irritated, and very quickly it can go downhill from there. So that is the fourth unreasonable expectation. The fifth is life should be fair, and I'm the one that decides what's fair. It's obvious. Don't you know? What is it about this that you don't understand? So we bring these in with our fabricated self to our interactions with other people, our attitude, and it's just more egotistical thinking. It's more unrealistic thinking. And if we look at what is happening in the United States today, and perhaps in much of the world, but let's keep it to the United States. There are the culture wars going on, and some people are looking at it as if it was a war. And so some people go to Fox News and they trust Fox News and they don't listen to anything else. And then other people might go to CNN or the New York Times and they never go to Fox News. And if you're watching on YouTube, and I do like to watch public television news hour. They seem to be less biased than most. But then on your right side, they have all these suggested videos. And usually it's more suggested videos for me, MSNBC, CNN, and so forth. And very seldom it's a Fox News video that they are recommending that I see. And so even YouTube kind of keeps you in this bubble, keeps you in your silo. And this is something that is different than it used to be. It used to be when I was younger, you just watched one of the network TV programs, and that was it. There wasn't Fox News, there wasn't MSNBC, there wasn't YouTube. And the news tended to take, these vastly different versions of the way they covered the news and what subjects they cover. There was a study that was done by two, I'm not sure what their degree was in, but this study, they paid Fox News viewers to watch CNN for 1 month. And they asked them then after that a series of questions about world news and their attitudes and so forth. And they gave them this before they started watching CNN. And then after a month worth of CNN, they asked them the same questions and their attitudes had changed. They'd become more liberal. And then when they quit watching, because they weren't getting paid anymore, they went back to watching Fox News, and their answers later on became more conservative. Now, the interesting thing is that this was on CNN, but what CNN didn't mention was that if you did the same for CNN viewers and paid them to watch Fox News, what would happen? I suspect it would be the same, that they would become more conservative. And then after a month, when you're no longer getting paid, they would be back to CNN and would never watch Fox News again. But this is how we isolate ourselves. I think this was in the study, but they had how much time they spent on certain stories, and a vast difference in the stories they covered and then the way they covered them. So if we want, we get to pick and choose what silo we're going to live in. I would also say, and I kind of hinted at this, that our separate reality even has parts to it. There's the reality you have when you're at home and you're got a family, your reality at work, your reality when you're doing various other things. We have different roles, I think is a good way to put it. And so this kind of indicates that these are not solid. Well, are there any questions? I don't see any in the chat box.
Yes, if anyone would like to ask a question, feel welcome to unmute your microphone and ask. You can alternatively, you can write them in chat.
I was wondering something about what you said at the beginning of the talk when you were quoting Trungpa Rinpoche. You said, I think the words something along the lines of, there's a feeling that I know who I am and that I belong. And I've kind of found as my meditation practice has progressed, and I do kind of feel like I have a better idea about who I am and what's important to me, and maybe a little bit more about my place in the whole big picture. It actually kind of makes me feel a little bit more isolated a lot of the time, and like I don't belong. Like I have a hard time sort of. It seems like I don't know, like I don't understand other people in some ways, or I have a hard time being understood. And it ends up feeling kind of lonely a lot of the time. So I guess I was just wondering if you had, I don't know, any comments or thoughts about that experience.
Well, at one level, when you start looking within, when you start practicing Buddhism, this is something that is not common. You have a large center there, and you can have lots of friends who are Sangha and so forth, but then you go to work. Try wearing robes. But it is, you fit in, but you're not realizing it. It's interesting because the first 2 years of working in the prison was really quite an adjustment for me. And I had much more freedom in things that I had done for livelihood before that. And I'm wearing my robes, and I confided in one guard once, I feel like I don't belong here. And he said, oh, yes, you do. But he meant it in a nice way. And this being comfortable, in a way you could say that what he's talking about is being comfortable in our own skin with who we are, with our own flaws and our own qualities, our creativity, our we sell ourselves short in terms of our abilities. And we need to recognize that. And going back to my experience, even before I was a Buddhist, I moved out here. Some of you have been here. The closest town is only 1.5 miles away. It's 273 people on the sign when you enter. I moved out here to get away. I was a city kid. I don't think any of you know this, but about my background, I mentioned J. Paul Getty. Well, the reason why I picked that up is in the 1960s, my dad worked for J. Paul Getty, and at such a high level that he was present at the board meetings. When he retired, he was financial vice president of Getty Oil. So I drop out of graduate school and move out here to kind of get away. I had this feeling that the police were after me for some reason, and had a lot of other issues. And I did not feel like I fit in. And again, I remember mentioning that to one of my neighbors. And he again said something like, "Oh, of course you fit in." A lot of it is just letting go of our fear. Letting go of our fear. And as I said last night, because of interdependence, we have innumerable connections to everybody else in our community. And innumerable connections to beyond our community, to the whole world. Some of you, I don't think were present last night, but when you buy food at the grocery store, you have the people that actually worked at the grocery store that were involved in this. You have a company that runs the grocery store. You have truckers, warehouses. You have the producers of the food, the processors. You have the machinery necessary to plant, to cultivate, grow, harvest, process, refrigerate. You need companies to make the machines. You need resources to mine companies to mine the resources from the earth, drill the oil, whatever, run the power lines to whoever needs them that's involved in this process. And one meal puts us in touch with the entire world, because all the people involved, they have families, they needed food, clothing, and shelter. And where did that come from? That came from other people. So it's good to remember these connections, this interdependent life that we are leading. And again, your education came from other people. And you look back historically about how the technology that we are using right now was something that was developed over time. It just didn't suddenly drop from the air. It took a lot of people over millennia to develop, come up with Zoom. And, in 10 years, it's going to be obsolete. So I hope that helps. I guess to sum it up, just have that warm spot in your heart for yourself. Maybe this is a good way to put this. This is kind of an example, a polar example of two extremes. One is a mother that is very loving and kind and wise. And so she has an infant, and the infant is crawling around on the floor now. Hasn't learned to walk yet, but it's crawling around the floor. And the infant then goes over to a chair and starts picking itself up on the chair. And it's just about to stand, and it falls over. And it starts crying. Now, a loving, wise mother will watch for a little while and see if the child will stop crying by itself. And if it does, then let it go back and try doing it again, which it will. And eventually it'll learn how to do that. If the crying becomes more intense, the mother comes over, holds it, gives it a hug, maybe kisses the owie. And it's amazing how magically the owie is better. Mothers are incredibly magical. So that is one way to, the mother also takes off everything from the tables and other surfaces that could possibly break or harm the child. So the child doesn't get involved in, shall we say, dangerous activities. Now, the other extreme would be a mother that, as the child is crawling around and starting to stand up on a chair, goes, "You're never going to learn that. You always fail. You're an idiot. Da, 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 da." The child falls over, cries. The mother comes over there and slaps it. "See, I told you." But we frequently are that kind of a mother to ourselves. We are quite good at that sometimes. And that's this warm spot in our heart, this feeling of home, that this is who I am. Warts and all, mistakes and all, but this is who I am. But underneath it all is my Buddha nature. Underneath it all is creativity, good aspirations and intentions, and so forth. And this is one reason why we do aspiration prayers. We may not be bodhisattvas and capable of acting like a bodhisattva, but we aspire to be like a bodhisattva because we have that potential. So I see in the chat box a few more.
Would you like for me to read them, Lama?
Okay, yeah, why don't you do that? And I then won't have to.
Got it. Okay. This question says, would you say This is from Michael. Would you say then that the self is just like the material objects that in that we are composed of many parts?
Absolutely. It's a material object is made out of parts, and the fabricated self is made out of parts. And the interesting thing is that these parts of the fabricated self, we solidify, we see them as being solid, unchanging, that this is who I am. Whereas these are just experiences that we've had. Last night, I used the example of a waterfall and a photograph of a waterfall. The fabricated parts are like photographs.
Mhm.
And just like material objects are solid and unchanging.
There is a second question that follows this first one. Michael says, if that is the case, again, that we are composed of parts, if it's the case that we are composed of parts, how do we apply that to the topic of emotional healing? In other words, such as persistent thoughts of regret over past actions that have harmed others.
Well, these are all good questions. Have I ever done a forgiveness program in Columbus?
I don't recall that specific topic. I don't know if there are any others here who might have background on that. I can't recall.
Yeah, well, I forgive you for not having me do that program.
I will go back and check. I will go back and check, and I'll let you know after the break.
Yeah, well, forgiveness is part of this. Part of it is doing confession in Vajrasattva. But the thing is, this is definitely part of the fabricated self because we solidify these things. There's a difference between remorse and guilt. Remorse is I've done something, I've harmed other people. I wish I hadn't done that, and I aspire to not do it again. Guilt is I've done something to harm another person. And there is this long series throughout my whole life where I've done things to harm other people. I'm a bad person. I'm guilty. And the interesting thing is that when you are guilty and you're a bad person, there's nothing you can do about it because this is who you are. So then what do? You don't do anything. You just keep beating yourself up and you don't go anywhere. You just wallow in it. So it leaves you powerless, leaves you helpless, and it leaves you hopeless when you are wallowing in guilt. So in Buddhism, guilt is another conflicting emotion. It's another poison of the mind. Whereas regret and remorse are excellent. So you see that you have done something that has been harmful, and you work on it. You do something. Another way to put this is that we are not the sum total of our worst actions, and we are not the sum total of our best actions. If we were the sum total of our worst actions, we probably all should be in prison. And I have found when having more discussion with participants of emotional healing that on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being Hitler, 10 being, let's just say Yalwan Karmapa, we kind of look at ourselves as a 1.2, 1.4, that we see all these negative things that we have done and we hang on to them. And we've got this long mental list of how we just keep doing bad things over and over and over again. And we're bad, bad, bad. And that's just more ego. It's just more ego, more fabricated self. It's secure because, yeah, this is why I do these things, is I'm a bad person. But when you recognize this, then you can at least let it go for a moment or two. What I suggested last night applies to this too, and that is when you find yourself going over and over and over again, thoughts of guilt. Well, say a little Vajrasattva at some point during the day, do a confession prayer. And in the meanwhile, let go of it. That it doesn't help to keep beating yourself up. Acknowledge it and then let go. And just like when you're meditating, if letting go means coming back to the breath, coming back to mindfulness of what you're doing with your hands, but let go of it. And then when it comes up again in 5 seconds, I'll let go of it again. This is the way our minds work. And our thoughts aren't solid. They're not real. And so we can let go. Next question.
Sorry, I was unmuted. Next question is from Rebecca, who asks, would you say that we expand our circle to have more overlap with other circles? Or is it that we do our best to let go of the circle entirely?
Well, it would be nice if we could just, and it's gone, but just expanding it is going in the right direction. I think we all know that this path is, you might say, one step at a time. Rinpoche compared it this way, that when you're on the foundational vehicle, you are walking. When you are on the Mahayana vehicle, you're driving. And when you're on the Vajrayana, you're in a jet. But the point is, it's still, little by little. And the goal is to have the walls dissolve. And I see there's one more question.
Yes, this is actually Michael again, just thanking you for your answer to his questions. I will scroll back and see if I see any other new questions. I'm not seeing any, but if anyone would like to unmute their microphone and ask a question, or in the reactions section below, you can raise your hand. You have a couple options.
Yeah, a lot of options. So, well, then maybe I'll go on.
Okay. Hang on just a second.
Yeah.
There is a question that's appeared in chat. Okay, here it is. Leoname is asking, my current emotional struggle is about feeling like a pedestrian on a racetrack. I try not to participate in the race any more than necessary. Oh, I'm sorry. I try not to participate in the race any more than necessary. I feel like all of my spiritual practices increase the problem it solves. I'm not sure I understand the question. You want to give that a try? Yes, you'll clarify, please.
I feel like my spiritual practices do a great job of bringing me in the moment and present and sort of slowing me down, which feels like it exacerbates by contrast, everything else goes faster. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, the pedestrian on the racetrack really feels like it captures how I'm feeling. And it feels like everything I do is about being a slower pedestrian.
I think I understand that. I'm not sure how to answer it on the other hand, but what I understand is that because of mindfulness, you're becoming more aware of what is going on around you in other people and how busy and speedy they are. And I'm going to ask a question, and that is, are you talking about at work or other places where you feel like you're the pedestrian on the racetrack?
I mean, some at work and just being just out in the world, just regular, going to get gas and walking in the park and just regular driving around and such. I feel like I would love to have more peace with the difference. Like the only problem is when I try to catch up. If I can just be where I am at the pace that I need to move in my own and be peaceful with that and just sort of pull over and let everybody else, like I need more I would like to be more at peace with what feels like this huge discrepancy between how I live my life and how other people live theirs without just never leaving my home.
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing is don't be concerned about being different. Don't be concerned about being different, acting differently, and so forth. That people are probably not noticing you as much as you might think. This is why when you're out walking in the park, they're walking around you. They want to get by you. They don't want to stay with you. They're in a hurry.
Yeah, I definitely don't feel like this is a concern for others. I feel like this is in my own.
Yeah, yeah.
Mind.
I'll tell you what, when I'm in the airport, people just walk all around me all the time. I'm an old man, they're in a hurry. And it's the same way when I'm walking in a lot of places that people are much faster than I am. And, if they want to do that, go ahead and do it. It doesn't make me feel like I'm doing something wrong. If you watch television, I'm definitely doing something wrong, and that is I'm getting old and wrinkled. The AARP is no longer the American Association of Retired People. They dropped that totally. It's just the AARP. And your guess of what the letters stand for is as good as my guess, but it's not. They are officially not the American Association of Retired People. And they've dropped the age, and I don't know what the age was for anyway, but and it's amazing because I used to belong to that organization when I first retired, but they still keep sending me literature, and it's always these young looking people. You don't have old, wrinkled, gray-haired women in that magazine. And you might have a gray-haired man, but of course he's not wrinkled and he's not that old. He's probably in his 60s. I've got a birthday next month. I'll turn 77. I can't keep up with other people. I don't want to keep up with other people. And again, when you dress like this, when you go into the store, sometimes people look at you. I will say this, that I am surprised how little negative looks I get. It's very, very unusual. And in fact, here's a funny story. I don't know if this will help you with your situation, but I have a favorite store that it's a combination hardware. They sell some lumber, farm things, feed, and so veterinary supplies, work clothing, and even things that you might need for your farm and truck and auto. And the staff wear orange shirts. That is, the store color is orange. And I get there a lot. A few years ago, I spent quite a long time with one of the clerks because I wanted tax exempt status for our center here. And while I am interacting with a clerk, she said to me, you know, a little while ago, a customer came up to me and pointed to you and asked, is he one of the new owners? And of course, I'm not one of the new owners, but I got a chuckle out of that. I'm the executive monk. Maybe I spend too much time in that store. Anyway, have I been of any help at all, Liana?
Yes, thank you.
Good. I like questions. Anything else? We've got a few minutes here.
Lama Yeshe, I have a situation I'd love your perspective on and guidance. I have a neighbor, and every so often we see each other and walk. We like to walk, and we walk around the neighborhood. You know, he has shared his views. He's quite conservative and a very devoted Christian. And so I just try to embrace that as best I you know, even though our points of view are sometimes different, I, you know, try to be positive about what he's sharing with me. But I have to say, as we walked, you know, he asked me about my family, and I shared that, you know, as we were talking, I was telling him we have one daughter, and her partner, you know, Jamie, and her partner Joni, and kind of saying they lived here in Columbus. And he just looked at me and he said, well, you know, they're going to hell.
Uh-huh.
And I, you know, and I have to say, there's like continuous comments kind of like that. And I try to say, well, thank you for that perspective, but I love them with all my heart, and I'm not that worried about that, but thank you. But it's just, I feel like he wants to become a better friend, but it's a little bit hard that we just have such different views on life. And I feel like this fabricated self, as we're talking about this, keeps coming up. And it's, I try to be warm and friendly to him, but I don't know. I just feel like I don't want to deepen this relationship. But, just would love your guidance on that.
There's nothing wrong with saying that in my faith, that I don't know if that's the right word to use, but that would be one that he could understand. We're talking about his language. That in my faith, this is not a problem. Might give him a bad view of Buddhism, but that it's
He
not.
already has one. It's okay.
So no problem. Yeah. That it's not a problem in my faith that there are many things that are considered non-virtuous actions, but this is not one of them, and that we feel that all religions have, you might say, they're very valuable, and that they have very good teachings. And you don't have to say then, but I participate 3 times a year in a interfaith service, and the conservative Christians will not participate in it. It's the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Quakers, the Lutherans, the Catholics, and so forth that participate in it. And I had a lot of contact with conservative Christians when I was a chaplain, because we would have, you might say, leaders of the different religious faiths come in and lead services. Islam, Jewish, conservative Christians, Catholics, Lutherans and Methodists, to Mennonites, Native American. I was the Buddhist, and so forth. And really, the teachings that Buddha gave are found in all religions. You might have to look for them, but don't kill your neighbors, don't steal, sexual misconduct. These are all there, but I was told by a conservative minister that I was going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
Buddha died and went to hell, and you're going to hell too.
And I guess my question is, it's just really hard to cultivate, warm, caring. I mean, I try to be warm and caring with this man, but, he suggested we go off and do things together, but I chose not to pursue that, just because, there's this harsh judgment on my values and beliefs, and, other things that are important to me. And so, I'm accepting of it, but so I was listening, I was thinking of this neighbor and just thinking about the concept of fabricated self, and that maybe I'm being too attached with my beliefs here, but I do have to say I struggle with he's a nice man, and I think he's a little lonely, and I think he enjoys having some companionship and friendship, and I try to offer it whenever I can, but it is a little thorny to hang out with this guy.
Yeah. Well, you can pray for him
Yeah, yeah,
that his heart opens up, and you don't have to spend time with him.
yeah.
And you, as you say, this type of thinking is very, very solid. I mean, this is the way it is. It is not possible that there is any other way. So it's up to you to decide how much time you want to spend with this man. But would be good to dedicate a little merit to him. Occasionally, maybe pray that his heart opens up a little bit, even a little bit is going in the right direction. In a way, I'm surprised that you continue talking, because he hasn't cut it off, saying that that you're whatever.
Yeah, no, he seems very happy to tell me that people are going to hell. He's happy to walk with me. So I, try to just take that in stride, and I just, to be warm and friendly to him. I feel a little badly that I'm kind of like not, I think I might have hurt his feelings a little bit by not wanting to be more social with him. But it was getting harder. Our view of the world was so different, and I just found it challenging. So my compromise is just when I see him, I say hello and how are you, and I always stop to chat with him, but not pursuing anything deeper. So that's kind of where I landed.
Yeah, and again, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. It's if you have anger towards him, ill will towards him, these sorts of things. Just realize that he is confused, and this is the world that he lives in. I mentioned last night that if we're controlled by our emotions, unless we learn how to lessen our attachment to our emotions, and he is being controlled by his emotions, his fear, what he has learned, his fabricated self. So have compassion, but again, realize that this is difficult for you, and maybe the relationship isn't much benefit for him either.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Thank you. And I will keep him in my prayers. I appreciate that.
Okay. Are there any other questions, Lama, Kathy?
I am looking in the chat at the moment, and I am not seeing additional questions.
Okay. Well, then I think it would be good to do the concluding prayers.
Okey-doke. Let's see if I can master the secrets of Zoom.
Yes.
I'm a little behind the times, but I'm catching up. All right, here is the dedication.
So nam di tam che zik pa ne tok de ne pedro nam pam je ne ke gana chi lap drup pa ye se pe so le dro wa war shok jam pa pa wo ji tar ken pa dang kun tu zang po de yang de jin te de da kun gi jesu tak lop cheng ge wa de da tam che rap tu ngo Sanjay Kusum Ne Pe Jin Lap Dang. Choni Min Gur Den Pe Jin Lap Dang. Gen Dun Mi Che Dun Pe Jin Lap Ki. Ji Tak Ngo Wa Mo Lam Drup Gur Chu. Paul Dan Lama Ja Pe Tan Pa Dang. Kang Yam Yo La De Ki Jung Wa Dang. Tak Sen Ma Lu Suk Sub Rip Chang Ne. Nur Du Sa Je Sa La Go Par Shok. Du Shi Le Gal Gal Wei Trian Le Pa. Karma Pa Tan Tan Pe Ning Po Di. Chok Tar Kun Kap Kap Ching Yun Mi Che. Tak Par Ra Pel Pel Wei Ta Shi Shok. Well, that completes this morning's teaching, and I'm pleased that all of you were here. I'm looking forward to finishing up this afternoon, and I am pleased that you are asking questions.
Thank you, Lama. Really appreciate this. And we will see everyone this afternoon for our afternoon session. And that is at 1 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, noon my time. And I always eat at noon, so maybe we'll just the first half hour, you'll watch me eat.
Uh-oh. Thank you. Okay, Lama.
I'm just kidding.
I'll stop the recording now. Thank you.
Yeah, but I do want to show